So hello and welcome to another episode of the COVID-19 Briefing, an interactive video series where we explore the economic and health implications of this coronavirus pandemic and what must be done to ensure successful recovery for businesses big and small. I'm your host, Thomas Paris, and in this episode, we will explore the added stress on SMEs to secure their supply chains in these challenging times and how counterfeiters impact their operations. Joining us today is Pravin Anand, Managing Partner at Anand & Anand, Sumit Kapoor, Global Brand Relation Manager at Amazon APAC, Surya Prabha, Policy Advisor for BASCAP at the International Chamber of Commerce, and our moderator is Michael Ellis, CEO and founder of Ellis & Associates and consultant for BASCAP, again with the ICC. So as you know, these briefings showcase our collaboration between the ICC and our many global partners from the private and public sector. During this session, we'll start by running through a few topics, followed by an audience Q&A at the end. So we invite you to send your questions in the chat and we'll go through them together. So let's kick things off. Michael, over to you.
Okay, so good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this event, which is hosted by CIPAM, the Ministry of SMEs, and ICC BASCAP, which is the Business Action to Stop Counterfeiting and Piracy. So BASCAP has, for the past 14 years, been an initiative of the International Chamber of Commerce, which in itself is an institution that represents more than 45 million companies in over 100 countries worldwide. ICC BASCAP brings together participants from the private sector and works with law enforcement in fighting counterfeiting and piracy. Representing companies covering all areas of industry, BASCAP has an established track record in dealing with many areas of counterfeiting and piracy. So how do we work? Well, basically, we operate and work to unite the global business community to identify and address all types of intellectual property rights issues. That includes, of course, developing tools to assist the anti-counterfeiting and anti-piracy community, promoting effective public policy, legislation, and industry best practices, encouraging targeted government action, and changing public perception. You'll find out a lot more about our activities if you visit the website on ICCWBO.org, and we'll have a slide at the end of this session which will prompt you and remind you of that website address. So moving swiftly on, while India is famously recognized for its advancements in science, in technology, for its diverse arts, culture, traditional knowledge, and the biodiversity of its resources, it's important that we recognize how all these areas are areas where creativity is stimulated by intellectual property protection. Knowledge and innovation worldwide remains the main driver for development. So the webinar today will seek to explore and understand some of the difficulties faced by SMEs in protecting that knowledge. We'll discuss how to protect the IP, how to secure supply chains in these challenging times. We all recognize that micro and SMEs are the backbone of industry and are being increasingly forced to migrate operations to online marketplaces. So we'll investigate the related impact on brand protection strategies. We're going to highlight how criminal groups have been quick to seize opportunities to exploit the COVID crisis as we continue to see counterfeited goods traded both domestically and across borders. So I look forward to hearing from our speakers who will be sharing their experiences and best practices as we look to how micro and SMEs are adapting brand protection strategies to fight counterfeiting, both online and in the real world, in the physical world, and what tools are available, which of course are especially important during these uncertain times. As you've heard, we have three experienced speakers with us today, and I will introduce each in turn later. We have Mr. Pravin Anand, the Managing Director of Anand and Chair of the ICC BASCAP India Working Group. Welcome, sir. We have Sumit Kapoor, the APAC Regional Brand Protection Manager for Amazon. Welcome, Sumit. And we have Surya Prabha, who's a Policy Advisor for ICC BASCAP India. Welcome, Surya. But before we start, and before we actually hear from our distinguished speakers, we're going to begin the proceedings today with a short video presentation. And that's been forwarded by Dr. D P Srivastava, who is the Deputy Director General of the Indian Ministry of Micro, Small and Medium Enterprises.
Good afternoon, everyone. At present, whole world is passing through very difficult phase because of coronavirus, and MSME sector is also badly affected. MSME sector is an important sector of Indian economy. If you see National Sample Survey data, then in the country we have 63.4 million MSME, which provide employment to about 110 million people. This sector provides maximum number of employment in the country after agriculture. The share of MSME in GDP is about 30%, and in export the share of MSME is about 49%. This shows the size of the sector and also its impact on our economy. But at the same time, there are many challenges in the sector. For example, access to finance, access to market, and access to technology. For improving competitiveness of MSME sector, we have several schemes, and IPR scheme of Ministry of MSME is one of them. In this scheme, we provide various incentives for encouraging IPR registration and also for establishment of IP facilitation center. But still, if you compare the registration in India as compared to countries like China, Japan and South Korea, it is very, very low. At present, international trade is largely affected by counterfeit and pirated products, including internet-based product distribution. The counterfeiting and piracy of products, particularly pharmaceutical products, involves the deception to patients, healthcare service providers and suppliers of genuine products. This is a more serious problem, especially in the period when whole world is fighting the menace of coronavirus. There is a need to enhance interaction between ICC, Indian MSME Associations, Ministry of MSME and WIPO for formulating a strategy for preventing piracy, counterfeit and also for encouraging IPR registration. For that, I think a mechanism should be developed by all of us. Thank you very much.
So there were some very powerful statistics shared by Mr. Srivastava, including the immense strength of the SME sector. He told us there were some 63.4 million SMEs in India employing 110 million persons, making it the second largest employment sector in India, responsible for some 20% of GDP. Quite huge and staggering figures showing the strength of that industry sector for important continent as India. So we're going to move now to our presenters, and I'm kindly going to invite Surya first to make the opening comments. Surya, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. So firstly, I would like to start my presentation with a very brief introduction of the scope and the scale of the problem. I understand that a few SMEs participating today are not very well acquainted with this problem, so I'd like to start with that. So first of all, let's talk about what counterfeiting is. So it is a crime that involves the manufacturing or the distribution of goods under someone else's brand name and without their permission. So counterfeit goods are generally of cheaper quality and they are made using substandard materials. And counterfeiters aim at selling a cheap imitation of similar goods produced by brands that consumers know and trust. So this is a very big organized business, and the OECD has estimated very recently, along with the EU IPO, that 3.3% of global trade is that of counterfeits. This is a staggering number. And a report that BASCAP produced along with Frontier Economics and Inter estimates that the trade in counterfeits to reach 4.2 trillion USD by 2022. And now coming more to home territory, to India, counterfeiting costs the economy about 1 lakh crore. Every single sector is suffering from this menace, including pharmaceuticals, FMCG, automotive, alcohol, cement, electronics. Beyond this economic impact, there's also serious consumer health consequences that we need to look at. And it also affects consumer trust in brands. So now moving to the theme of today, how is counterfeiting shaping up during the COVID-19 pandemic? What we have learned is that counterfeiters stop at nothing. While cities are facing lockdowns, businesses have shut operations, counterfeiters are continuing to take this opportunity to accelerate products and use their very flexible supply chains to perpetuate this criminal activity. As we can tell, these infringers, they're agile, they examine and they react very swiftly to market trends. Just to give you a very small example on the scale of what's happening, Facebook has removed millions of ads just in the last 3 months, promoting the sale of fake masks, fake sanitizers, disinfecting wipes, and COVID-19 test kits. However, as it may seem, the current increases in counterfeit goods are not limited to hygiene and health products. There is a massive surge in online shopping due to lockdowns and a lot of people staying at home. So even unrelated sectors like household goods or sporting goods, they're seeing spikes in fakes being produced. So we've examined this, we've analyzed this data, and we're looking at a few reasons on why this could be possible. So first of all, a majority of legitimate factories have shut production, or slowly a few of them are resuming production, and this has caused a massive shortage in the supply of legitimate products. So counterfeiters are scaling operations to meet this demand by consumers. And I think this can be observed especially in March and April, with the large seizures of fake masks, fake hand sanitizers across the country, the Indian country. And these products pose a huge health and safety risk, since they create a sense of false security and may accelerate the spread of the COVID-19 virus. The next reason that we've pointed out is there's been a reduce in custom checks, market investigation, raids, and enforcement actions, all because of social distancing and safety measures that have to be in place. Frontline officers at customs, for example, have been limited in their availability, and this means that infringers have more opportunity to take a free ride. The other key reason here that we're looking at is people are shopping online much more than ever, primarily because of most of them staying at home now. And according to analysis by ACI worldwide, transaction volumes in most retail sectors have seen a 74% rise in March compared to the same period last year. The dark side of this is that people can be more easily tricked. Many sellers use photos of genuine products and they offer these at extremely low prices. And ultimately, what you find in your mails are fake products. So now more than ever, companies need to look at securing these supply chains and enhance the global fight against counterfeit goods. So let's just take 2 steps back now and address brand protection for SMEs before COVID times. So several have the tendency to ignore putting in place a proper consolidated brand protection strategy. There are reported incidences of SMEs rolling out products, having an enormous consumer base, but no trademark registration. This makes it a very expensive and uphill battle to secure their brands and fight counterfeits. Others have in place very local strategies in response to a transnational problem. And this could be due to many reasons, and budget being one of the key ones. There is also the misconception that once their products are popular, the brand name will in itself act as this golden shield of protection. But now, what we see is that the COVID-19 pandemic has further amplified an already existing problem. So now, while we're talking about brand protection in this current scenario, we need to consider 3 things very closely. The first thing is that SMEs, will have limited resources. Many are at the risk of financial collapse. Many are almost close to shutting down their businesses, and several have cash reserves of less than 1 month. So what does this mean for brand protection? Resources that were earlier meant to fight counterfeits may be reallocated elsewhere. And this no action strategy may have an exaggerated effect as we move to post-lockdown phase. The next thing that we need to count in is consumers have less money. The crisis has caused an immediate reduction in the income of several people. And now people may be looking for cheaper alternatives, and this may inadvertently push them to buying counterfeit goods. The final thing is that there has been a continuous surge in counterfeit goods. As I mentioned, criminals did not cease their activities just because we're in lockdown. And this actually may come as a surprise, but they might be in a better position to restart or continue their operations to meet the demand than legitimate sellers can before they can open production and place their products in markets. Having said this, what I'd like to do now is present some data to corroborate this. As previous research has shown from both the OECD and the EU IPO, the epicenter of counterfeit production is China, and India among the top as well. I'd like to present some seizure data gathered by Roos, an independent consulting firm, over the last 3 months from customs database. There are many interesting takeaways here as we prep for our strategies for the coming months. So the first thing, counterfeiters continue their operations brazenly at a time when the world was in a lockdown. They've operated through very tightly controlled and closed family networks that manufacture and assemble products without the risk of any external interference. So this means distribution has been highly agile and increasingly e-commerce based. And also an increase in small parcel seizures, again evidence that COVID-19 is accelerating the shift to e-commerce. With most international post services still under operation, counterfeiters do meet consumer demand, but although slightly delayed. The COVID-19 situation in China is more or less under control. Several factories are back in operations. What does this mean? Counterfeiters will continue to exploit weaknesses in the legitimate supply chain, especially for SMEs, by offering lower than normal prices for source and raw materials. So such threats, they're not present only in China, but everywhere globally. And this can be continuous for SMEs working in all sectors, including food, beverages, clothing, lifestyle, and FMCG. So now let's talk about what we're doing here as BASCAP and how we can be of value. So BASCAP brings together stakeholders and international partners from across all sectors. We engage closely with governments and brand owners to explore how we can secure supply chains. And this we do by collecting and sharing data with law enforcement and industry stakeholders. This could include smuggling routes, concealment techniques, and infiltration attempts. We also collate incidents where front companies have been used to infiltrate supply chains. And finally, we have an engagement on e-commerce where we draw attention to online IPR frauds. Just to give you a flavor of some of the work that we have been doing in India, on the policy front, we've been working with the government and we have a very sustained dialogue with customs. Customs are at the forefront of seizing counterfeits and they prevent their entrance into the legitimate supply chain, after which it is very difficult to track these goods. So cooperating with customs is especially crucial for SMEs, especially for those with limited resources, because as compared to inland market investigations and enforcement, custom enforcement takes a lot less resources. So in recognition of this, we have really scaled our engagement with customs on capacity building, on sharing red flag alerts and data that criminals use in shipping manifest to circumvent detection. We've also been supporting CIPAM in developing a training manual for customs that can be used as an on-site ready reckoner for them. And finally, we have events such as these where we have open collaboration, we have industry and customs on the same platform to exchange best practices and intelligence on counterfeiters. And in terms of advocacy, we support the DPIIT's CIPAM initiative on suggested policy changes, and we support their initiatives to raise more awareness of the issues surrounding counterfeiting, including the impact on consumer health and safety. And on e-commerce, we've been facilitating discussions between e-commerce and industry on upstream issues and the adoption of standards that make it more difficult for counterfeiters to offer their products on these platforms. We're pushing for standards such as more seller transparency, for example, and proactive takedowns. Before I leave, what I wanted to do is share the participating SMEs a checklist of basic actions that they can take to protect their brands as we move to a post-lockdown phase. So the first thing, and right on top, is conduct online vigilance. Focus on key platforms for your products. Spreading thin resources across too many online platforms may not yield very effective results. So focus on tracking down fakes on platforms where you know your consumers shop the most. The next one is, as we move into this post-lockdown, there are expected supply chain routes to change, especially when you're onboarding new suppliers. It's critical to articulate to these suppliers the associated IP risks. A smart approach to due diligence is really needed right now. So what we suggest is maintain a basic know your supplier verification process. Look at your client's trading name, bank details, company, registered number, and you can even check their true address through the telephone bill or their electricity bill. And as you reopen operations and as part of business continuity, maintain strategies which ensure you secure your source of raw materials. Do not be tempted to purchasing cheap raw materials or ingredients thinking that you found a better bargain. Criminals are happy to offer goods in relative safety and at distance, mostly through the internet. And often you will not realize that you have purchased a fake item until it arrives at your doorstep, and it's probably too late by then. And the next one is, when you want to take action, don't just look at IP infringements, also connect this to other crimes or product requirements. For example, food and safety labeling requirements, or connect this to consumer fraud. The next one on the list is working with law enforcement. Collect and share data with law enforcement. This really provides them with tools to be better at their enforcement action. And this could also include you providing product identification trainings for them. This will make it very easy for officials to identify your real and counterfeit products. And finally, I wanted to leave you with this. So SMEs are encouraged to work closely with other industry groups, as it is normal for companies to come together and share from each other's experiences and lessons that they've learned when it comes to fighting counterfeit goods. Increasing this collaboration is also very important to increase the priority of IP crimes on government agenda and the law enforcement's agenda. So with this, BASCAP welcomes further collaboration and further discussions with SMEs on protecting your brands. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Surya, for laying the foundations of our conversation, and I thank you very much for drawing attention to some of the challenges in terms of industry sectors. You mentioned cement, auto industries, food, FMCGs, pharmaceuticals, healthcare, and it's true. Unfortunately, the scale of the challenge has no boundaries. It respects no particular industry, and you've made that perfectly clear, as counterfeiters are simply chasing profits and money by selling substandard goods. A very interesting statistic: 3.3% of global trade, 3.3% of total global trade, representing trillions of dollars, is IP fake illicit goods. So massive, massive profits for criminals. So thank you very much once again for setting the scene. I'm now very honored to welcome Mr. Pravin Anand, the Managing Director of Anand, and the Chair of the ICC BASCAP India Working Group. The floor is yours, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. What shall I say? Good afternoon, or good morning, or good evening. I think you may have people from all over the world, and it may be different time zones. But let me lay the foundation, or at least define the scope of what I'm going to talk by three principles. One, I will be speaking broader than just on brands. I will be talking a little more about other intellectual properties which may be very important for smaller companies. Second, I will not be confining myself to what is technically regarded as an SME by the definition of, let's say, the MSMED Act in India. The Act defines in terms of investments. It could be a small company in terms of the number of employees. It could be a company located in a backward area. So I will be talking generally about the whole class rather than confining myself to just the SMEs as technically defined. And third, I will be talking on a mix of defensive and offensive strategies. Of course, there are strategies in almost every walk of life, but for intellectual property, both are important. And let me start by something hot from the oven. Just about an hour and a half ago, I was confronted with a virtual hearing before the Delhi High Court, where I was seeking an injunction and got one against a startup company which had copied somebody's pharmaceutical, a very famous pharmaceutical company's patent, under the impression that patents were suspended during a pandemic. Of course, a false impression, but very important advice to an SME to make sure that you do not copy other people's patents, or that, for that matter, their copyrights. Do not pirate software, because if you are injuncted, it may well mean that all your initial investments go down and break the momentum and enthusiasm with which you started off. I think also you may discover, if you've taken open source software, the terms of the license may either imply that because of your incorporating the same in your software now no longer can be protected through intellectual property because it is open source by the definition of the contract of use. And therefore, it's very important to defensively protect yourself in intellectual property. Second, always make a data record of your intellectual property, your licenses, what is your trade secret, define your trade secret. You certainly don't want a situation that you file a case for breach of confidentiality and the court and the defense asks, but you haven't accurately defined what is your trade secret. And a lot of companies don't do that till somebody copies their trade secret. They don't predefine what is their trade secret. To protect also your trademarks and domain names, keep a track of them. Keep a track of the agreements that you had with maybe your graphic designer. And I can tell you about a very famous case relating to the famous Bukhara restaurant in Delhi, outstanding Indian food, reputed to be one of the best in the world. Suddenly they discovered that somebody had copied a Bukhara, the name Bukhara, for a restaurant in London. And when we went to sue the person, we were told that there cannot be a copyright in the logo because an assignment had not been in place. Of course, we were entitled to get an assignment in presenti in that date, which we were able to get with great difficulty. And there's a story behind that. But that rocked the boat for a while. Getting assignments from employees when you file a patent application. If you don't get proper assignments, it could lead to the kind of scam you may have read about relating to Satyam, where one of the inventors got up and said, I haven't assigned this right. So an SME particularly might get destroyed and decimated if things like this were to happen. Third point, develop a brand, a good brand. And I think it's very important to choose something distinctive, rare, and invented, rather than something which is descriptive or generic. I think also get good searches done. Sometimes you have famous companies. You have a company, a very, very famous company using a corporate logo, which when I saw that, I'd seen it somewhere. And it turned out that the advertising agency who had charged a lot of money had copied it from a famous book. And they paid something like 25 lakhs of rupees. And that logo had to be redesigned. So it's very important to do proper common law searches. And you would remember, without a search, a company called Wipro had a bubble soap for children, but they were stopped in court because they just missed double soap for the double soap, and they were phonetically similar. So very, very important to do your searches. Then patents. Patents in some countries are being used defensively. In other countries like India are being used to file lawsuits. In China, patents are being used defensively to create portfolios so that you can do a cross-licensing or challenge somebody, and so have a mutual arrangement. I think the important thing here is that the India filing of patent applications is so low, just about 45,000, as compared to China's 1.2 or 1.3 million. The question then arises, a lot of people say, oh, it's to do with quality of the patents. But quality, when is it seen? Quality is seen when there's a dispute 10 years down the line. At the beginning, for the first 10 years, it's quantity which is important. So this is one place where quantity stumps quality. And therefore, it's important for an SME to get into patents. And all the literature which says that an SME is not concerned so much with R&D because they don't have the money and because it's too painful to get a patent, and therefore the trade secrets and trademarks are more important for them, I don't believe and subscribe to that at all. In fact, I believe that an SME can have technology of any kind. I know the Schneider case, the telemechanic case of the Delhi High Court, which just involved a groove, or the metal box cases, which involved just a little rib or an indentation on a lid of a tin container. And patents are granted for those simple things. And SMEs are full of ideas. And because they're full of ideas, therefore they must protect their patents and must learn how to play the game. In the beginning, your quality may be very bad, but you learn the game. You learn how to draft, you learn how to read, you learn how to search, you learn how to compare. And once you've done that, after 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, you'll become experts and start filing higher quality patents. I think that's a very important thing which I'd like to again emphasize. Then think globally. Very often you don't think of international treaties like copyright. You get a copyright globally the moment you make it. No registration required. Instant protection in all Berne and UCC countries by virtue of international treaties. Think PCT, which gives you a priority right in the PCT countries. Trademarks. A lot of countries are recognizing trans-border reputation. So therefore, SMEs must now not think just territorially about India, but think globally. Now, today we have a big problem. It's been predicted by AIMO that 51 million jobs will be lost in this sector. The lockdown 4.0 has relaxed various operations, and the SMEs will be allowed to operate 33 to 50%, even in the red of their operations, even in the red zones. I think another area which they need to look at is cyber protection, good cyber protection. Now, the one aspect which I wish to, because I don't know how I'm going for time, but just wanted to give a few examples here of very useful things done by smaller companies, like, for example, Khadi. Now, Khadi, the MSME ministry has got two divisions, and it's got a Khadi and Village Industries division. And there they've been promoting the brand Khadi to be commercialized globally and protecting it as a brand globally. It's a great example of how a traditional Indian cultural artifact can be protected globally. The GI geographical indications in India are now being commercialized. And for the first time, I saw at the Goa airport a store which is selling various GIs like Pochampalli and Banarsi saris or Kani's Pashmina shawls and a variety of other things, Kalamkari. And that's the way the traditional smaller industries are getting into profit making. And that's, I think, a good lesson to learn. One more example I'd like to give is that of the Honeybee Network and the National Innovation Foundation and Shrishti, who had started this campaign of grassroots innovation. And they had inventors who came up with things like a bamboo bicycle or an amphibian bicycle, which could go on land and water, or a lot of herbal compositions or agricultural implements for which patents were applied. And they went to, the foundation went to various law firms and who worked pro bono for them and filed patents and got patents. And that's another great way in which rural innovation got protected in India. Then the one other big thing is on the defensive side for SMEs to be now aware of the GDPR or the privacy issues on the internet, because they could completely ruin a company, and therefore those need to be looked out very carefully. Startups are now starting to even file lawsuits. We've had cases where a e-Ludo lawsuit was filed and hotly contested by smaller companies. A pet food company suing, Span Diagnostics, a diagnostic company suing for patents. Again, very small companies in the artificial intelligence area for education. And these are all examples of how SMEs are now starting to even assert their rights in their intellectual property rights in court. The other important point here is how the government now has recognized in various ways that SMEs need protection for their intellectual property and have allowed various measures. But I think my time may be up, so I'll leave it for the next speaker, and perhaps if there's a question on that, then maybe I can answer that.
No,
thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. That was very interesting. You touched on a number of particularly important points, but initially you were defining the importance of trade secrets, the importance of trademark registration, the importance of conducting good legal searches, making defensive use of patents for cross-licensing, thinking globally, all very positive messages. Thank you very much for that contribution. I'm going to come back to you about the question around law firms working pro bono. There's been a thread of questions from attendees who have been asking, what support is available, especially at this time when, the crisis has impacted on everybody's margins. So some companies are asking, well, what government support? So if I may, I'll come back to you, because this concept of pro bono legal services, of course, may be a potential interest to some of those listening in. But before we do that, if I may, I'd now like to introduce Sumit. Sumit Kapoor is the Regional Brand Relation Manager for Amazon, both in India and APAC region. And Sumit, the floor is yours. Look forward to hearing your words. Thank you.
Hey, thanks, Michael. I understand that there is a confusion with regard to what we should say, good afternoon or good morning. So I'll go with the most generic one, that is hello. So hello guys, my name is Sumit Kapoor and I'm a Global Brand Relation Manager at Amazon. And before I get started, I want to thank the ICC Academy, the Ministry of Small and Medium Enterprises, Government of India, the Cell for IPR Promotion and Management, and BASCAP for facilitating this webinar. So I had the fortune of working for CIPAM as its founding member, and I'm glad to experience the issues now from other side of the table. And today I'll be speaking about the various tools which are implemented by Amazon for protecting intellectual property at our platform. And as also, how we are working to help the brands, including the MSMEs, in protecting their brands on Amazon. So guys, at Amazon, we work tirelessly to ensure that brands are given the guidance that they need to use our tools effectively, and their voices are heard to drive the product and program improvements at the back end. And my team partner very closely with the strategic associations to build bridges with brands and resolve the issues directly. We launch strategic programs to address pain points with the goal and objective to ensure that the brands are able to effectively protect their intellectual property on Amazon. But with COVID on top of my mind, I did want to spend some time talking about the work we are doing to respond in these challenging times. So first and foremost, we employ some of the most advanced machine learning capabilities in the world. And these machine learning tools are focused on being proactive and stopping the bad actor before they can ever list a product on our platform. We use a number of proactive measures to detect potential issues and to take remedial action before we ever receive notification from a right holder. So this is the work that we are doing using our machine learning tools as like an automatic response to the bad actors. We continue to innovate and use technology to identify patterns that help us detect offers and sellers that pose a high risk of counterfeit or infringement. Our goal is to identify and remove potentially problematic products and sellers from our marketplace before they ever have a chance to create a negative customer experience. And these efforts have been focused to reduce the risk of counterfeit in the COVID-19 related product, and especially the medical supplies. We have also focused heavily on protecting our customers from price gouging during this time, and there is no place for price gouging on Amazon. And that's why our teams are monitoring our store 24/7 and have already removed tens of thousands of offers for attempting price gouging. We continue to actively monitor our store and remove offers that violate our policies. Guys, with my very limited experience at Amazon, I can say that one thing that Amazon thrives on is customer obsession. And this customer obsession basically motivates Amazon to constantly improve and develop means to help brands protect their intellectual property. And one such means that we have developed is brand registry. Amazon Brand Registry was launched in 2017 as a free service to help brands protect their intellectual property at Amazon. And once brands enroll in Brand Registry, it gives them more control over Amazon product page that use their brand name, because of which customers are more likely to see the correct information associated with their brand. A brand registry also uses the information that brand provide about their brand to implement additional predictive protections that attempt to identify and remove potential bad listings automatically. And in addition to all these things, the brand registry also help the brand registry also help brands build and grow their brand at Amazon. Now, whether that's advertising or potential capabilities or customer insight, getting analytics, etc., the brand registry has got it all. And there are a lot of things that we are excited as we build the brand registry. Our increasing interest in brand registry also stems from the fact that we have seen brands taking interest in it and getting benefited out of it. In the past 3 years, we already have, say, around more than 350,000 plus brands enrolled worldwide on these, and these brands have seen 99% fewer suspected counterfeit infringement. To protect brands, we have developed some powerful tools which are powered by brand registry. And these tools include one, automated brand protection, or ABP as we call it in Amazon. So ABP proactively identifies and removes suspected infringement on its own. And as the name suggests, ABP is an automatic proactive tool which is based on our machine learning approach. This automated brand protection helps to remove the infringing listings even before they make it on our platform, as I mentioned in the starting of my talk about the machine learning thing. The ABP tool works by using the unique data that brand provide us through brand registry, and the data allow us to automatically create some custom rules per brand. The second tool in this line is report a violation, or RAV as we call it here. This tool is very powerful tool. It basically allows one to search and report counterfeits at our platform. And after the brand completes the search, brand registry provide them with a simple and guided workflow to submit a report of potential infringement that we can, review and take appropriate action on. The third one, and the very interesting one, is Project Zero, and some of you might have heard of it. So Project Zero basically provides brand with the unprecedented power to remove suspected counterfeit from our store on their own. So basically, Project Zero gives right owners the power to directly remove listings from Amazon store without having to report and have us investigate the complaint. And in other words, basically, if a brand finds that his or her IP is being infringed, they can, take the listing off our platform on their own. So this is a unprecedented level of responsibility in the hands of brand, but we feel that this is, this could really help us and brand to work together more closely and effectively to bring down counterfeits to zero. The fourth one is transparency. Transparency is an item-level product serialization service that uniquely identifies the products and help us prevent the counterfeit against your branded product listings. And the last one is IP Accelerator Program. This is the most recent one. This was launched in 2019. And we launched IP Accelerator to help emerging brands obtain trademark and IP protection from the earliest stage of their product life cycles. IP Accelerator basically connects brand with a curated network of trusted IP law firm, which help them more quickly obtain IP right at a more economical and a pre-negotiated rates. And once their trademark application are filed through IP Accelerator, we provide brand access to protections and brand building features in Amazon store. So basically, these protection help protect and grow their brand months, or in some cases even years before their trademark officially gets registered. But please note, the IP Accelerator program is launched in only some regions right now, and we are in the process of expanding it to other regions. I should also mention here that all of these tools are available for all the brands, irrespective of their size, and all the MSMEs are eligible to use these tools. Only you need is a trademark, registered trademark, and we are also working on getting the registered trademark through IP Accelerator for those brands who don't have it. With the help of our tools and consistent efforts, we are happy to say that we have seen a huge impact on brand protection related issues. In 2019 alone, we blocked over 2.5 million suspected bad actor accounts from entering our store, and more than 6 billion suspected bad listings from being published in our stores. Almost 99% of all Amazon page viewed by our customer did not have a counterfeit complaint. We actively monitored more than 45 million pieces of feedback we received every week from our customers, right owners, regulators, third parties, in order to identify and swiftly remove bad listings that might have passed our proactive control. We analyzed tens of millions of customer reviews that are submitted weekly for sign of risk or fraud. And in 2019, we invested more than $500 million and employed more than 8,000 people to fight this fraud and abuse. So guys, we are happy that brands are experiencing lower infringement rates at Amazon and have access to more data about their brand, and they have more control over their brand represented on Amazon through brand registry. So while we take pride in growth and all the things we have achieved so far, we also understand that we are not perfect, and in order to stay ahead of bad actors, we need to keep improving ourselves and learn more innovative ways to help our brands in this joint fight against counterfeits. With that, I'll stop, and thank you very much.
No, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Sumit, for describing how you provide brand guidance, how you are proactively engaged in remedial actions. You described the brand registry tool. You showed how, as a quick reminder, 350,000 brands, I think you said, are included. And you mentioned the tool also available, the automated brand protection tools that you have deployed, which has brought around 2.5 million removals, bad actors, and over 6 billion items removed. It's tremendous efforts. Of course, the Amazon platform being so large, so the scale of the problem, of course, is equally as large. We've had lots of interesting questions coming in, and I'll come back if I may to you with some of them. But the first comment, if I may, is to say that Thomas has confirmed that copies of all the presentations will be made available for everybody. I thank people for their comments who are reminding us that, you know, you must consider not just patent protection, but trademark protection that allows for longer periods of protection, of course, and also consider the importance of blockchain in future discussions. If I may quickly, somebody has asked a question regarding whether there are statistics available to show an increase in IP infringements during the COVID crisis. My answer to that is traditionally some of the statistics are not immediately available. They come out over a yearly period. So we will have to wait for these statistics to come through. But what we will, of course, refer to, as Surya told us in the beginning, is that a clear sign or an indication of as a result of the COVID crisis is the nature of counterfeiting, how quickly criminals have jumped on the possibility of producing, manufacturing, distributing globally fake personal care equipment, fake face masks, fake hand sanitizers, fake disinfectants, etc. The criminals have seen a global epidemic, and they've seen an opportunity to make money. So while we wait for the actual statistics, I think a clear indication you can see already that very quickly they'll jump on it. And there have been seizures in many parts of the world. I'm very pleased to see seizures in India as well. There have been seizures in my own country, coordinated cases also with Homeland Security in the USA, etc. So that's a good indication of what is happening. So if I may, we have maybe 15 minutes. I would like to direct some questions. Specifically, I will start with you, Mr. Anand, if that's okay. And I'd like to start by asking if you could reply to the comments in the original video by the Deputy Director of the Ministry of Micro SMEs, suggested there should be a strategic working group established between WIPO, the ICC, and the Ministry to address what he described as IP registration shortfalls. Now, you did mention that in your opening comments, and some of the reasons why there were low filings, maybe related to cost, etc. But I wondered if you had a view on his observations. You may need to put your microphone on, sir.
I'm so sorry. So I think this is an age of collaboration, and the bodies which have been named in that short video are bodies who are skilled in their respective domains. The IP experts, WIPO, and the business experts, your organization, and the government, which is a regulatory expert. And all those talents, if they come together, then they can do one thing, and that is to excite the knowledge and interest of potential IP owners in India. So, for example, success stories don't seem to be brought out in seminars and symposia, workshops. Inventors love to talk to other inventors. Engineers love to talk to other engineers. Lawyers love to talk to lawyers. So if an inventor were to come up to a seminar and talk about the success of his product, it would have a huge effect on the enthusiasm levels of other potential inventors. I know that going on morning walks with a person who was of a commerce background and had no knowledge of science, but was a good businessman, I had excited him through those morning walks to apply for patents, which in 3 years' time grew from 1 patent to 25 patents. And then he tied up with a German company and sold his business for a huge sum of money. And I know of other stories as well, where people have got enthused by these success stories, and it's very difficult to get inventors of famous products from, let's say, Germany or the UK or United States. But with your means and with your contacts and the government's contacts, if all the parties collaborate, these can be brought perhaps through a webinar, and those success stories will have a great impact on boosting the filing. It's not that people are not inventing, because if you see the figures from 1972, when our Patents Act came into force, to 1995, the patent filing remained a flat curve between 3,500 to 4,000 patents, whereas R&D had gone up 50 times. So people were inventing, but they didn't have faith in the system and were not protecting their patents or their technologies. So yes.
So if I may, I hear exactly what you're saying, and of course I agree with you 100%. You know, you say people are not inventing, and you said you described earlier how somebody had created a bamboo cycle, etc., etc. So the innovation and creativity is there, but you touched on something very interesting. You said governments maybe we need to call more on governments bringing in other governments to try and bring investors and big companies into India, if I understand correctly. Maybe that's a concrete way that we can sort of, maybe through ICC avenues as well, but this is something that we could encourage in the future, is your suggestion. And in turn, as you say, that will then increase IP registration, trademark registration, and then the intellectual property environment becomes more robust and stronger, if I understand. Yes, perfect. Thank you. Could I, Sumit, there's been many, sorry, thank you very much, sir. Thank you. Sumit, there's been many questions, obviously, a lot of people interested in strengthening their online protection. So quite a few questions here that people have asked. The first, if I may, there's a sense that law enforcement, not just in India, but maybe broader across the region. I know you can speak for the region. My own experience in the IP environment. Sometimes law enforcement it's very difficult to engage on copyright and trademark enforcement issues. Do you have any thoughts on how to redirect their priorities, how to maybe leverage more engagement?
Hey, thanks, Michael. Speaking in my personal capacity and drawing out of my experience working with CIPAM, I won't completely disagree with this presumption, and I completely agree that this problem is not only limited to India, but however, many countries globally are having this issue, including the APAC region. I think the fundamental reason here is one, the enforcement agencies are overburdened, and two, the infringements are generally considered impacting the creamy few, and they're not impacting the masses. And this understanding is not correct, and not only it need to be rebutted strongly, but we need to sensitize and create awareness in with this regard amongst our enforcement agencies. I know as a matter of fact that CIPAM and other agencies, including ICC BASCAP, have been doing some great work in this regard, and they have actively reached out to all the police academies pan India. I myself was leading this this vertical, and we did a huge work around this. That said, we also need to do something more, and in my suggestion, we need to have some sort of dedicated cells, very similar to cyber cells as we have now in India, to deal with the IP related issues. Having a central coordination agency can be a game changer here. It can help provide one-stop solutions in such cases. However, that said, the fact that the law and order is a state subject in India might be some issue. So we need to frame the roles and function of the central agency very cautiously and wisely. We would certainly need some more legislative solutions, and I believe most of the panelists would certainly agree to that. We have seen certain provisions in the Trademark Act which have been confusing both to the enforcement agencies and to the brand owners, especially 115.4 to mention. So we do need some sort of legislative changes to do away with such confusions. But these are all, my personal comments.
I was going to say my own experience is that law enforcement communities around the world are being faced with so many different challenges, whether that's through international acts of terrorism, whether that's through cybercrime, whether that's through huge movements of societies from different parts of the world into other parts of the world. So IP crime, trademark crime, counterfeiting has to take its place. And often it's where you see that convergence of crime. You see the convergence between human trafficking and IP crime.
Exactly.
Drugs, impact on the environment. These are the sort of leverage mechanisms that sometimes work. I do hear very much your comment about dedicated IP crime units. It's something that works very well in other parts of the world, particularly in the US. They have the National IPR Centre. In my country, the UK, there are dedicated units. There are many others around the world. In China, there are dedicated IP crime courts. So I think these are very, very important. If I can, I'll quickly move to Sharia. There's one piece we haven't really touched on, and that's around the consumers. We did speak about demand, consumer demand, but do you think there's enough being done to educate consumers to the potential harms or the potential dangers that are out there in India? You have to put your microphone on. Sorry.
Thank you for that reminder. Just building on what Sumit had mentioned with the CIPAM's initiative, the DPIIT's initiatives. So there are several such awareness campaigns in play. For example, BASCAP also has the I Buy Real consumer awareness campaign. And in India, for example, we've been working with CIPAM and with other industry bodies in raising these messages. And globally as well, we've launched this campaign in several other countries. So we've been talking about consumer health and safety risks, and these have been aired through social media or primetime TV. But I think a lot more can be done on this issue, especially when we're looking at counterfeiting, not only as an IP infringement, but how this is linked to other crimes as well. So research, it's established that criminals use counterfeiting as one of the routes to facilitate crimes, say in money laundering or human smuggling, illegal wildlife trade, and also to fund terrorism. I think these things need to be brought to the fore for consumers to actually prevent themselves or to be more aware of not to purchase counterfeit goods.
I think that's a very important message. There is a part to say to consumers, it's not a cheap deal. You're not getting something for nothing, because at the end, you're actually damaging your own societies as well. Mr. Anand, if I may, again, just a quick question. I touched on it earlier on. Brand protection means cost for SMEs at a difficult time. Is there anywhere SMEs can get some financial government support, perhaps?
Yes. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah. So apart from the Act itself, the MSMED Act, what the government has done, they created a kind of a certification board, of an interministerial board for tax purposes, which had, I think, is under the DPIIT, and it's got the RBI, and it's got science and technology and certain other ministries, and they give you the approval of being a qualified partner. And when that happens, you are entitled to get facilitation, which means you can have somebody help you draft your patent applications, and the cost of that attorney will be paid by the government.
And very quickly, if I may, very quickly, where would somebody find that information? Where does a SME in India find that?
On the website of the Patent Office, you have a list of the facilitators.
Perfect.
Yes, and also filing fee is reduced. The fast track, you are entitled to fast track, and so it all adds up to a big package deal.
Thank you. That answers that. Thank you very much. That answers that very well. Sumit, we're coming close to, we've got about 5 minutes left, Thomas, I think. Sumit, if I may, a few people have asked this question, very, very valid question. We're talking about the automated brand protection on Amazon. And the question relates to whether that is restricted by country, or is that a global protection? It's I think you said global, but your microphone.
Yeah, sorry for that. It's a global protection which is available. Yeah.
And if I may, follow-up question in very short, very quickly, if you can. How can an SME themselves conduct their own online risk assessment? Do you have any advice?
I think, one need to, as Mr. Anand very rightly mentioned, that SMEs and startups now need to take IP seriously. And first thing first, they need to start respecting IP of others and also start creating of their own. And once they have that, they need to use all the means available to start protecting it. And if it comes to Amazon, as I mentioned, we have provided various tools in order to help MSMEs and startups, in fact, all the brands, how to protect their brand at Amazon. And the journey starts with brand registry. So I think my one line advice would be, guys, start taking IP seriously.
Yeah, okay, that's a good line. And Surya, you had mentioned in your comments the need for sort of online dedicated vigilance, especially at this time, that by the SMEs themselves should be checking that, should be spending some time looking online for maybe their own infringing goods or somebody copying their websites, etc. So again, there is a shared responsibility, obviously, for the brand holders themselves to be checking and working in partnership with platforms like Amazon to protect their interests. If I may, Surya, just very quickly, one last question, and it's a very broad question, but I just wondered what you think in your in your experience, the sort of what works best in protecting your own IP? I know it's a very broad question.
Well, thank you, Michael, for that. So it is broad, and I think there are many things that you can do, but what I would say is leverage your work through collaboration, because I think you have access to multiple different pieces when you leverage your collaboration with industry groups, between industry and government, and most recently with the DPIIT and CIPAM opening their doors really wide to industry. There's a lot of opportunity there for us to engage. Just a little example there, for example, BASCAP, we have a coalition of we're a cross-sector coalition, and we have regular dialogues with CIPAM where we bring in a variety of problems to the table, and we have very open discussions about these.
No, I think that's important, and again reinforces the message about working in partnerships. You know, this problem is not isolated to one country, it's not isolated to one business, not one industry, not one government, not one law enforcement authority. It's a shared problem. It impacts on at all levels on society. It doesn't respect age, it doesn't respect ethnic gender, it doesn't respect boundaries, and unless we work in partnership, we will never ever have a resolution. So, ladies and gentlemen, we're coming very quickly to the end. We have literally 2 minutes. So, if I may, I will firstly, on behalf of everybody that's attended, I'll thank our speakers very much for their contribution. I remind you that BASCAP is open to all companies, organizations, large and small. Our members are invited to provide contributions in drafting materials, in implementing in our teams, in hosting stakeholder events, and being part of our working group initiatives. We have many initiatives around free trade zones, e-commerce, landlords, supply chain vulnerabilities, etc., as you have heard. BASCAP is working in, we have regional work streams in the US, in South America, Africa, and as you've heard here in India. So there's the website, there's the web page where you can find a lot more information about what we at BASCAP are doing. But importantly, I'd like to draw your attention to an ICC call for action to save our SMEs. Save our SMEs. It's called SOS. Go to that web page, and right on the front page, you will find the link to the SOS campaign, which is basically ICC support to combat economic repercussions during the pandemic period. We're calling on everybody, including governments and international organizations, development banks, business organizations, and multinational corporations to work together and coordinate their actions to save our SMEs. And my final comments, if I've got the time, is that BASCAP stands ready to provide on-the-ground assistance to all of you through our network of national offices in over 100 countries. Our collaboration with key intergovernmental organizations brings that value as we fight to ensure that urgent information and support reaches those who need it most. So thank you very much for joining this webinar, and I look forward to hearing from you again. Thank you, Thomas, and thank you to our speakers. Goodbye.
Goodbye. Thank you, everyone. So both of the speakers and for the audience. Oh, hang on. Let me just mute. There we go. All right. So hang on. Just going to mute your microphones just for 1 second. So I want to, again, thank you everyone, both on the participation for the questions and for the speakers. As a reminder, we are hosting live broadcasts on this topic, in addition to other topics like the Incoterms rules, cryptocurrency, and leadership coaching, and many others. So sign up on our website for free and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you. This has been another episode of the COVID-19 briefing. See you next time.